breaks, Thanos. How's it, everybody? Kikai Matsumoto here, presenting to you all another film review of 2018 that I'm doing. This film review will be covering Deadpool 2, the sequel to the Merc with the Mouse first solo adventure. Now, before I get into this, for question of the video, what were your thoughts on the second installment in the Deadpool franchise? Did you like it? Were you indifferent to it, or did you hate it? So, sorry for my eyes. It's just a bit late and I'm a little tired, but I can't really go to sleep because of my insomnia. To summarize with this film, much like the first one, if you're not a fan of cursing, you're not gonna like this film. It's loaded with cursing, violence, innuendo, pop culture references, fourth wall breaking, although not as much of it as the first one. It's and the thing I found out about this one is they seem to have really toned it down in comparison to the original. Ryan Reynolds and Morana Baccarin, they return as Wade Winston Wilson, aka Deadpool, and Vanessa Carlyle, respectively. And Wade, after some prodding from Vanessa, tries to protect a young boy by the name of Russell Collins, aka Firefist. He's played by Julian Dennison, and he's trying to protect Russell from the time-traveling mutant Nathan Summers, aka Cable, who is portrayed by Josh Brolin. So after a failed attempt, he forms the X-Force in an attempt to stop the metal-armed warrior from executing Russell, which will prevent a tragedy in the future. The X-Force is composed of Nina Thurman, aka Domino, who's portrayed by Zazie Beetz, a mutant with the ability to manipulate luck, Shatterstar, Zeitgeist, Vanisher, and Peter, who's just an ordinary human on the team, much to the chagrin of Dopinder, the cab driver. Dopinder, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Yukio, who happens to be Negasonic's girlfriend, and Colossus all join the fray. So here's what's good about this film. It's still funny as ever, although not quite as funny as the first film. It has several neat references throughout, including both visual and audio jabs at other film franchises such as Logan, Green Lantern, X-Men Origins, Wolverine, etc. They they actually took a piece of the soundtrack from Logan and deliberately used that towards the end. I don't want to spoil that, but you'll if you have the soundtrack, you'll recognize it when you hear it. Special effects were decent, and it had more emotional weight to it than its predecessor. Acting, for the most part, was very well done. Josh Brolin, owned the role of Cable. And that's the other thing I forgot to ask. What were your thoughts on Josh Brolin's performance as Cable? I know some people were kind of polarized about it. I personally liked it, all things considered. So, I mean, and the mid-credit scene in this film, absolutely golden. So now for the bad/mediocre. So while it was still funny, a good chunk of the film, specifically the last half of the first act and the first half of the second act, was almost humorless. Now granted, that's not always a bad thing, but this is Deadpool we're talking about here. We're supposed to have constant laughs throughout, and this one kind of fell short of its predecessor in that regard. In fact, honestly, a lot of the elements in Deadpool 2 felt like it was toned down in compared to the first one. Like, there's not as much gore, it's not as bloody as the first one. There's no on-screen nudity, which actually I was thankful for. I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. And there's not as much fourth wall breaking. It just felt more mild than the first one. Also one more mild complaint is that there really was no clear cut and dry villain in the film. And it seems that title seems to be shared among three people at different points of the film. All of the X-Force members, sans Domino, were little more than cameo appearances. And speaking of, I don't think I saw Stan Lee in that film. I think he might have been like a sculpture or a painting, but he didn't cameo in person. Certain ethnic stereotypes also felt like they could have been avoided, and the whole plot of the film as a whole kind of felt cynical, kind of almost like a stereotypical superhero film with a little bit of insanity thrown into the mix to spice things up. I mean, Deadpool was largely successful because it went off and it did its own thing, much like Guardians of the Galaxy. But now this one seems to be kind of, I don't know, it just felt a little different, if you will. All in all, though, it was still a riot that I would definitely go see again, and I give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Good job to director David Leitch and everyone else involved. So, That wraps it up for my honest review on Deadpool 2. I hope this answers any and all questions you may have. If not, feel free to shoot me a comment down below. And again, let me know in the comments below for question of the video. What did you think of Deadpool 2, and what were your thoughts on Josh Brolin's performance as Cable? So up next, part of my childhood returns in the sequel to the film that not only piqued my interest and introduced me to the world of superheroes, but also gave me my fascination with super speed and everything that goes along with it, Incredibles 2. So, anyways, have a great day or evening, depending on the time zone you're in. Stay safe. Good night, everybody.